All right, let's jump right into today's explainer. We are exploring a dramatic, mythic chronicle that honestly feels incredibly relevant to our world right now. But we aren't just looking back at history. We're going to view the fall of Meridian directly through the eyes of Seraphel Ordan. He's the angelic governor of the Fourth Gate. We'll really feel the severe weight of his duty as he watches a mortal city totally trade its soul for cold efficiency and absolute safety. It's a story that absolutely forces us to examine the profound ethical dangers of sacrificing individual freedom.
When light becomes law, even a crown of hell must kneel before the boundary it cannot cross. Man, what a quote. For Seraphel Ordan, this isn't just a mission statement, it's a cosmic law. You see, Seraphel isn't your typical gentle guardian angel. He is severe, righteous, and completely unwavering. As the governor of the Fourth Gate, his duty isn't just to swing a sword at evil, it's actually to govern the very boundary between order and tyranny. So he descends upon a corrupted mortal city, not to conquer it, but to force every false throne and twisted oath to measure itself against the pure weight of truth.
Now, if we look historically at the older scrolls of the Lantern Concord, the Fourth Dominion wasn't described as a weapon or a loud booming hymn. It was a holy territory. They called it the realm of consecrated rule, and its power was strange and honestly awe-inspiring because it taught every single being the exact weight of its place in the world. To Seraphel, this power is absolute. It commands a king to remain a servant of justice, and it literally forces a demon wearing a stolen crown to remember that a rule taken by fear is never true sovereignty.
Let's move into Section 1, the Fall of Meridian. You know, Meridian didn't fall to demons in a single violent night of fire and brimstone. That's not how it happened. Rather, Seraphel watched in quiet agony as it fell through this creeping, tragic surrender that the citizens themselves actually disguised as wisdom. Just look at the progression here. In Phase 1, before the famine, people argued loudly under cedar roofs. It was vibrant, it was chaotic, sure, but it was free. Then, famine and ash raids hit. By year 1, the first demonic crown whispered a promise of safety. By year 4, a second crown promised peace, but only if people just stopped remembering old injustices. And finally, by year 7, the third crown promised prosperity by literally feeding on the fear of neighbors. To Seraphel's absolute despair, the citizens eventually defended their own captivity. When you contrast the two eras, it really reveals the insidious nature of this fall. Before the intervention, Meridian was lively. It was governed by 13 mortal stewards chosen directly from the people. There was singing near the fountains. And afterwards, well, the streets were perfectly swept. The granaries were strictly numbered. The bells had been melted down into these heavy bronze commandments. The city looked perfectly orderly on the surface, but it had completely lost its voice. Seraphel saw the tragic truth of it all. They had mistaken a terrified quiet for actual unity.
Which brings us to Section 2, the three demonic crowns.
So the first demonic influence to seep in was the crown of obedient ash. And to Seraphel's absolute disgust, this entity didn't chain the physical body first. No, it tired the mortal soul. It preyed on pure exhaustion, making people find this really unhealthy comfort in simply being told what to do, just so they didn't have to carry the burden of making choices anymore. Seraphel literally witnessed this crown thrive on transforming a totally natural human desire for safety into a thoughtless, sleepwalking obedience. Citizens completely stopped asking if a law was morally good. They only asked if it came from above. It's the ultimate tragedy of a free people, right? Choosing the cold efficiency of taking orders over the moral responsibility of individual freedom. Next up came the crown of sealed memory. Now, this demonic entity didn't sit on a throne. It lived in courtrooms and ledgers. It literally covered the city archives with a gray film of forgetfulness. It was entirely designed to hide the tracks of unjust rulers behind polite little phrases and bureaucratic silence. Seraphel knew an ancient truth. Evil absolutely fears exact memory. Why? Because accurate history leaves zero shadow wide enough for tyranny to hide its mistakes. Under this crown, the names of the hungry became mere statistics. Records of unjust arrests, they just vanished.
It even turned rebel songs into nonsense syllables and trained the minds of clerks to completely deny the existence of people taken in the night. It's chilling. And the final crown was harvested fear. This entity took hold of Regent Caldras. Now, Caldras was a leader who had actually once saved the city, but eventually grew to resent it. The crown just kept whispering to him that every single shortage, every broken well, every external threat was a valid excuse for harsher, absolute rule. The ultimate ethical danger here is so clear. When fear rules a city, the leadership must constantly invent new enemies just to remain in power. Everyday terror was literally converted into official policy. The original Council of 13 was reduced to one single high chair, and eventually, even an act of unauthorized kindness became painted as a suspicious act of rebellion.
Section 3. The Descent of Dominion and the Seven Pillars. Look, tyranny never has the final word. On the 49th night of the Silent Bells, a child named Elian climbed up an old watchtower and struck two stones together. It was a tiny, almost foolish little sound, but crucially, it was unauthorized. That small act of disobedience sparked a seam in the air, and Seraphel Ordan and the Dominion host finally descended.
When they arrived, they brought the 7 pillars. Now, these aren't physical columns, but laws of holy power that act as a perfect philosophical countermeasure to the demons. You've got measure, which stops cruelty by ensuring punishment never exceeds the truth. Witness breaks generational silence by making sure nothing is forgotten. Shelter demands that power must be responsible for the weak, totally destroying the abuse of the vulnerable. Seraphel brought these specific pillars to perfectly dismantle the dark logic that the crowns had built.
Moving to Section 4, the Judgments of Seraphel.
When Seraphel arrived right in the central square to deliver a severe and terrifying mercy, Captain Ronvan raised his sword. Ronvan was a man chosen as the vessel for the crown of obedient ash, and as he stood there, he recited this twisted city commandment: order is mercy, questioning is hunger, silence is survival. It is such a chilling example of a tired man trained by a demonic crown to actually believe that basic human doubt was treason. But here's the thing. The pillar of measure didn't strike Rovin down with a bolt of lightning. Instead, Seraphel simply lifted a hand and invoked measure. Suddenly, every single order Rovin had ever given physically manifested in the air as ash-colored birds. The small, clean birds represented his necessary, hard choices. But the swollen birds? They screamed with the weight of unjust beatings and ration thefts. Seraphel understands that measure doesn't just crush a sinner, it reveals the exact moral weight of their choices so they can genuinely choose confession. And confronted with his true actions, Rovin broke his own sword. And the incredible nuance of the Dominion field is that it operates on absolute truth, not tribal loyalty. While it completely shatters the false authority of tyrants who protect their pride rather than their people, it also freezes the arm of the vengeful rebel who tries to strike a surrendered guard or lie to steal property. Seraphel's holy power doesn't just pick the winning political side, it restrains both the tyrant and the oppressed to prevent the victims from simply becoming the new devourers themselves.
And finally, Section 5, the burden of true stewardship. As dawn broke over Meridian, the citizens fully expected Seraphel to stay and rule them, or at least install an angelic king. But Seraphel refused. He insisted instead on the hard, slow, painful restoration of mortal stewardship.
The city had to rebuild itself. The 13 seats of the council were rebuilt, but with one really profound change. One seat was permanently left empty for the Pillar of Witness. This was to constantly, daily remind the mortal stewards that unseen victims belong in every single decision they make.
For any leader facing ethical challenges today, these lessons are just paramount. True stewardship separates the rightful burden of leadership from the mere possession of power. A ruler protecting others shines, one feeding on them fades into smoke. Seraphel's dominion teaches us that taking shortcuts around moral growth, like trading freedom for the efficiency of a dictator, always leads back to bondage. Rebuilding a broken people requires daily, grinding courage, not instant magic.
Right before the Dominion host departed,
Seraphel knelt down to Alien, the child who had summoned them by striking those two stones together. In a beautiful, hidden act of mercy, Seraphel gave the child a small bell clapper made of white bronze. It was a perfect reminder that heaven answers a sound almost too small to be called music, as long as it's the sound of someone refusing to let fear define their world. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a really provocative thought. Think about your own life and your own spheres of influence. If you were handed that white bronze bell clapper, how would you manage that incredibly fragile boundary between righteous order and efficient tyranny? Remember, true dominion isn't about control. It is about responsibility. Thanks for exploring this mythic chronicle with me today. Stay curious and keep learning.